straddle stretch sequence. So this is a great exercise to help with stretching your middle splits. So how they're going to do this is start by sitting in a straddle. So they're just going to sit to the point where they can feel a slight stretch. So they don't need to be in a really big straddle if they're not very flexible to start off with, just where it's comfortable, but they do need to feel a little bit of a stretch. So the first position that they're going to do, so I like to do this also varying how they have their feet. So I always get them to go pointed feet first. So they need to keep their toes pointed the whole time. And I'm going to lock out my legs also and think really tall through my back. So we want to get good posture here. So once they're in that position, they're going to grab one hand and tuck it behind their back. Then reach the other hand to the side, and then they're going to reach over. So I don't tell them to reach for the toes because then they just sort of bend down here rather than keeping nice and long. So I tell them to like reach for the wall or whatever's on this side of them. So they're reaching sideways rather than to their foot. So you want to make sure they keep that nice posture as they do it. Their shoulders should stay back and down. So it shouldn't be rolled forwards, it should be back. And the opposite hip needs to stay in contact with the floor. So they shouldn't be raising up that much that there's becoming a gap. That needs to stay flat on the floor. And then they'll swap to the other side. So they'll get more of a hip stretch by reaching out rather than reaching for their toe. Second position that they'll do is like reach over. So I tell them to put their elbow on the ground in front of their knee and then keeping their chest facing the front. So again, they don't want to turn and face their leg. They're going to reach their hand over the top. So this time this hand is reaching towards their toe. So if they are flexible, they can sort of slide this bottom hand down to make themselves lay down a bit more. But again, you want to make sure that opposite hip isn't lifting off the ground and that their chest is staying facing the front. So it's not swapping. And you go to the other side. And then the third position is you are now going to get them to turn and face their leg. Put one hand on either side of their leg. And then same thing, keeping very good posture. I think about getting my chest onto my toe. So not chest to leg. If you think chest to toe, it's going to keep the posture nicer the whole time and you're going to bend forwards. So shoulders down, back straight, and they'll find that they can't go far, but it's still going to give them a good stretch. Again, just checking that opposite hip isn't lifting up off the floor, and then coming up and going to the other side. So keeping our back straight as possible, and then coming up. So in between those positions, I generally alternate between, once they've done like this stretch, then I'd get them to reach forwards as far as they can. And then they would do the next positions. And then the other one is putting your hands behind your hips and pushing yourself forward. So going more deeper into your straddle and just holding yourself there with your hands behind your hips to stop them trying to slide back. And then coming back and then continuing the sequence. So because there's 3 sequences that reaching forwards or backwards will alternate, and I'd go through that, like sometimes I go twice or 3 times with pointed toes, and then you do all the same sequences but with flexed feet. So making sure their legs are still nice and straight the whole time and their feet are going to stay flexed the whole time. So if they're not used to this, their legs may cramp. Just get them to have a little rest in between if that is happening, but ideally they want to try and keep their feet flexed the whole time between all the same reaches. So the one that it does differ depending on their flexibility, they may be able to actually grab their toes to make that stretch a little bit deeper. But the rest is the same. There.